Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. One of the things that's kind of neat about being a smaller channel is before I do one of these videos, I usually take the time to think, is this something one of the bigger channels has done, or do I have a point that's so obvious one of the bigger channels will probably cover it and make one of my videos on it redundant? And I gave this one some thought, and I think I have a concrete point with some really interesting illustrations to make the point. So I'm excited about that. But the problem is this story is also really irritating at my gut level. And I just want to go on a rant about how stupid I think this is. So I've got to control that so I keep the train of thought. I'm going to talk with my brain first to give you that as a takeaway. And then maybe after that, then I'll go on a rant about how annoying this is. So pretty much I saw on Twitter an image going around of a comic book page where Marvel Comics is going to be introducing a new character, Voyager. But they are introducing her as if she is an old character who has always been on the Avengers. And on the page, they show some classic moments from the Avengers founding through the Avengers history, and they draw her in as if she's always been on the Avengers team as a founding member and a regular member. And this is annoying, but I can't go on a tangent about how annoying it is, or I'll start bloviating and lose the train of thought. So the concrete thought I have is this is dumb, but I think I may have some ideas of how this could be done well or done better. And what I'm thinking about is the manga industry and the Western superhero comics industry. And on video after video on this channel, I've argued for having a wide amount of things you read and things you take inspiration from, especially if you are an artist or a writer. I think that artists and writers, they shouldn't just read comics. They should read Charles Dickens. They should read Jane Austen. They should read nonfiction works in history to fill their imagination with as much stuff as possible. And I think people who only read manga and want to make comics, they should read some Western comics. I think people who only read Western comics and want to write stories and make comics, they should read some manga, because the compare-contrast can help you spot some really good things and maybe spot some really dumb things. In general, one of the nice things I see in manga that's a dumb thing about Western superhero comics is the death being meaningful. Generally speaking, not always. So in Western comics, superhero comics, it's been a running gag for a long time that the deaths of characters don't mean anything. If they die, they'll be back again. Just wait a week and they'll be back. This has at least been the case since the death of Superman, probably even older than that. Death doesn't matter much in superhero comics. And this is an old problem that's older than any recent political spats. And it's one of the dumb things that chase me out of superhero comics. Generally speaking, when I've read manga, this isn't quite as big a problem. Sure, there may be a scene where the superhero, the main character of the manga looks like he's dead, and then it's a fake out, he was really alive. Even if there's like a fantasy thing where they were dead, but then they were resuscitated. Generally, they don't have the problem of characters constantly dying and constantly coming back and dying and coming back and dying and coming back until death is a joke. But I want to give two examples of where something dumb like that, I've seen something dumb like that in manga. By the way, one of the motto of this channel is Summa Spoilerum, Summa Triggerum, Summa Tangentum. All the spoilers, all the tangents, all the triggers. I'm going to be providing spoilers of character deaths in two manga, Dragon Ball Z and Fairy Tail. So if you care about spoilers, you've been warned. Dragon Ball Z is super old, and you've probably already had this spoiled by memes, and Fairy Tail is dumb, so don't worry about spoilers for Fairy Tail. So these are two illustrations of something really dumb, which I think plagues the Western superhero market. And I think if the Western superhero market can identify this problem, this may be an unfixable problem. It may be too late to make death matter in Marvel and DC Comics, but I think this is something that needs to change about Marvel and DC Comics if they're going to be healthy in the long run. Decades down the road, things like death need to matter in comics again. So let's start with Dragon Ball Z. When I was a little kid, I hated Dragon Ball Z. I thought it would be stupid. I'm not the biggest Dragon Ball Z fan. As an adult, I discovered the abridged series, and that got me interested in it. And I thought the anime was okay. I really loved what I've read of the manga. I've read probably the first 5 volumes of Dragon Ball, and I thought it was phenomenal. I gained respect for Akira Toriyama's cartooning ability. I thought it was well-paced. A lot of the things I disliked about the anime were much better in the manga. So hear me out on this. Dragon Ball Z is completely stupid because death doesn't matter. At first, the first death, I think, was young Krillin, and that had a lot of emotional impact because he was Goku's best friend, and you came to love this character and respect this character, and then he died, and it was a shock, and Goku was affected by it. And then, using the power of the Dragon Balls, Goku made a wish and wished Krillin back to life. Okay, so that was a sort of a fantasy, magical element which brought Krillin back to life. But this was explained as a one-time thing. You could bring someone back to life once with the Dragon Balls, but you could never repeat your wish. Therefore, death still felt permanent. It still felt like dying was a bad thing, and it's not good for you to die, and your death could be forever. Later, there are other sets of Dragon Balls, and there are aliens who can make new sets of Dragon Balls, and death became a joke. If someone died, that's okay. We'll just wish them back later. And I think this is why you'll see memes making fun of Dragon Ball Z characters' deaths, is what should be emotionally impactful. The death of a character that we like, dying heroically in a struggle. It's a joke because later just gets undone. This is stupid. Anyway, but so that's an illustration of it in Dragon Ball. An illustration of the same principle in Fairy Tail. I've watched a lot of the Fairy Tail anime before I just gave up on it. I have not read the manga because of this problem. So in the first few seasons of Fairy Tail, I really enjoyed it. I was really invested. I was loving the characters and the action. And I remember the death of a main character, Lisana, I think. Lisana was one of the main character's best childhood friends, and she dies in a really meaningful and impactful way. I remember watching that scene with a group of my friends where we all liked anime, and we were all emotionally impacted by that death. It felt like that character's death mattered, and it felt like it mattered to the other characters in the story. And then a few story arcs go by, and they have this weird adventure in an alternate universe, and it turns out that she was never dead. She was teleported to another dimension, and she's been okay this whole time. And that was irritating. I found out from reading that one of the editors, I think at Shonen Jump, liked that character and instructed the creative team to bring her back. And it was really obvious that they brought her back in a forced and unnatural way. And what's sad about that is her death has emotional impact. Like in real life, death has emotional impact. You don't come back from death. So death has emotional impact in fictional stories if it's permanent. But if you just undo it and it's gone, then from that point on, it's harder to be invested. She wasn't that interesting of a character after they brought her back. She was just, I get the feeling they just brought her back to do some cheesecakey fan service scenes, and they didn't do anything interesting with the character once they brought her back to life. And that was when I started to check out a Fairy Tail. That and other annoying things about it made me just get frustrated and give up on that anime. And I haven't even touched the manga since then. I don't want to waste my money on it. I don't want to waste my time on it, because now I know that death doesn't mean anything. And if death doesn't mean anything, the story doesn't really mean that much to me anymore. So this is generally a problem in DC and Marvel comics. This is a problem, and I guess my point is that stupid things are stupid, whether we're talking about superhero comics or manga. Sure, they're very different in their style. They're very different in how they draw certain things, or the types of stories they might tell, or how they pace their stories. But there are certain universal principles. Heroic characters fight to protect others, whether we're talking about Western superhero comics or manga. Death being meaningless is stupid and breaks you out of the story, whether we're talking about Western superhero comics where it's a joke or manga. It's always irritating. So the connection I'm making with Voyager in Marvel Comics is this is a stupid instance of someone coming along and saying, you know, all that old stuff you read that was emotionally impactful? Yeah, that doesn't matter. Here's our version of it. So pretty much this character Voyager, she is new. She was not introduced in the 1960s in the first issue of the Avengers. She was not part of the team for the decades of history these characters were published. And now they come along and say, oh, here's a new character. Isn't this so interesting? So I think I have made my concrete mental point, and I'm about to go into emotional, I'm so triggered mode here. So let me wrap up the point I'm trying to make with my brain, and then I'll go on my rant. So I think that the superhero Western comics market needs to learn from the manga market, and I think the manga market has a lot it can learn from the Western superhero market. The Western superhero market needs to make death matter in comics again, and have this sort of individual focus. Because manga tend to be created by a team of people, their stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and death matters in a lot of manga stories. I think the Western market is plagued by these characters. Their characters can never, their stories can never end, because then they'd have to stop selling comics about it. If Spider-Man had a meaningful death, they'd have to stop selling Spider-Man comics. Therefore, popular characters live forever, and their stories can never have an end. And I think I have a solution to this. It's really easy. They should just publish different versions of the characters where the stories are allowed to have a beginning, a middle, an end. If Spider-Man dies in the Ultimate Universe, he stays dead. His death continues to have impact and meaning because it's permanent. And then after a while, after they end the story, then they end that story. So the Ultimate Spider-Man universe will end, the end, the story's done, and then they can immediately create a new universe. So if the Ultimate Spider-Man, if that character grew up in the early 2000s, then in the next universe, Spider-Man would be a high school student again in 2018. And then he can be the Spider-Man for kids growing up in 2018. They tell his story. It has a beginning, a middle, an end. He dies. And that's the end of 2018 Spider-Man. And to me, this just seems like a really obvious thing they could do, where they just don't get caught up in all of this crazy universe, time travel, multi-dimensional stuff that keeps people out of the comics market. And even people like me, where I've read comics for a long time, I just get frustrated with it and I want to take a break. And manga is now there as a valid competitor to the Western comics market, where if I want to take a break from dumb stuff like what Marvel is doing, I can go to manga to take a break. That's my point. Time for a rant. This Voyager thing is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. Do you know how Aku is the physical manifestation of evil in Samurai Jack? This Voyager thing is as if what is stupid about superhero comics was given corporeal form. Like, it's like this is the Antichrist. If we could kill the Antichrist, we could stop the apocalypse. If we could just kill Voyager, we would kill SJW Marvel forever, because she is in earthly form the manifestation of all that is stupid about Western comics. Oh my gosh. I have zero confidence in this, and I know it's stupid. I'm not going to bother with it. I'm not going to waste my money on it, but it's also politically irritating. This is also illustrative of what's annoying about SJW Marvel. I used that tag in some of my early videos because it was a popular tag to describe this, and I've stopped using it as much because it feels a little clickbaity, but this is SJW Marvel, this Voyager dumb idea. And one reason it is I know that this is bait. The purpose of this is for Mark Waid to say, hey, look, we got a great new female character. Oh, you don't like her? You think this is stupid? What is your problem with female characters? Why don't you like female heroes? I love female heroes. This is objectively stupid, this idea. And I can prove it. So let's imagine that DC said to Marvel, hey, Marvel, tell you what, we will give you permission to use the character of Batman for free. Well, we're not going to charge you a penny for it. You can do whatever story you want with Batman. And Marvel had the idea of saying, hey, what if we had a story where Batman was an Avenger? And not only was he an Avenger, he's always been an Avenger. He helped found the team back in the 1960s. Well, what I would say is that's stupid. And it doesn't matter that Batman is tied with Spider-Man for being my favorite superhero ever. It doesn't matter to me that he's a man or a woman. What matters is this is completely stupid because Batman was not a founding member of the Avengers. If you want to make someone a founding member of the Avengers who was not a founding member of the Avengers, all you have to do is to create a new story and then tell decades worth of good stories that are meaningful to people with that new character, and then people will like that new character because they will have a long history of good stories where that character is a part of the story. You cannot just come in 2018 and say, wouldn't it have been nice if this new diverse character was part of the founding team and had been invented in the 1960s? Let's all pretend that this character has been around since 1960. And this is even reflected in some of the comments from the Marvel bigwigs. So Tom Brevoort calls Voyager the most important character you've never heard of. No, Tom, you don't get to just tell me to be invested in this character because she's new. You have to tell me a story with this character, you fool. Bleeding fool is the article I've been looking at. So, how would it be possible to do something like this and make it work? It's kind of a dumb idea off the bat, but there might be a way to make this dumb idea work if you are a good storyteller. But I have no confidence in Marvel Comics to tell this story. But let's imagine that Sean Gordon Murphy, an artist I really admire, were given a similar task. What if DC said, hey, Sean Gordon Murphy, we want you to add a diverse character to the Justice League. And then Sean Gordon Murphy had this idea that there's this, black Muslim female, genderqueer superhero character who was not only a member of the Justice League, but she was one of the founding members of the Justice League. Well, because I trust Sean Gordon Murphy to tell me a story, I would at least have confidence that he could tell a story like that and not make it about baiting me or insulting people like me. I would believe he could tell a story where this diverse character was a character and not a little puppet to make a political point, and I could enjoy the story, and I'd probably buy it, I'd probably read it. When SJW Marvel does this kind of thing, I know what this is. This is a continuation of Ghostbusters 2016. This is a continuation of Star Wars, where if you either dislike something about Star Wars, if you dislike new Ghostbusters, or even if you're just ambivalent about it. I don't hate new Star Wars. I'm just completely ambivalent about new Star Wars. If The Last Jedi comes on cable TV and I am washing dishes, yeah, I will watch The Last Jedi while I'm washing dishes out of the corner of my eye. I don't hate it, but I just do not care about these new characters. But for the left, you are treated as a person to be derided if you do not love these new stories, and I don't even think they love these stories. I think for them, this is their opportunity to virtue signal how woke and special they are. We love female characters. We are not sexist. You do not love our stories. You are sexist. That I know that's what this is going to be for Voyager. So that when people like me say, this is a dumb idea, then guys like Tom Brevoort can say, see the sexist pushback we get when we try to introduce a wonderful new female character. But the problem isn't the female character. The problem is this is stupid and you are not telling me a story. I am so irritated by this. This represents everything that drove me out of comics in the first place. Death not mattering, characters not mattering, the history of the stories not mattering. We will do whatever we want with the stories we told you, and if you object, you're a fanboy or you're stupid and we're smarter than you. Respect what has been written, and if you want to do something new, tell a brand new story. Don't just erase the universe and say, we're going to pretend that didn't happen, or we're going to pretend that the universe was upside down the whole time that was going on, and then expect us to take you seriously. This is the kind of thing that makes me want to say comics are just stupid little things for little kids, and I should just go read a real adult book. This idea of saying a character who we have never written about before she's always been here, and you should love her because she's always been a member of the Avengers since the 1960s. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Stupid, 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 stupid. Oh, if I were not just buying a couple comics from Marvel about characters I like with artists I like, this idea is so stupid. This would have been the type of thing which would have convinced me to just swear off Marvel Comics entirely. It's convinced me that the editorial direction of Marvel, Secret Empire, was already stupid and I didn't spend my money on it, but there is clearly a problem of idiots making up this nonsense at Marvel Comics that is impossible to be invested in. I'd rather go read Charles Dickens than that kind of nonsense. And in the long term, this kind of stupidity has to stop if anyone's going to care about these characters in the long run, or if any child's going to be able to be introduced to these characters and care about it. Character death has to matter, and the beginning and middle part of the story has to matter. Little children will tell stories and they'll be funny because they'll just make up things as they go and they'll change things as they go. And you laugh and you enjoy it because a child is telling you the story and you can enjoy it with that mindset. So maybe if Marvel wants to be evaluated by the same standard of evaluation I would use for a 4-year-old story, where I just laugh and say, oh, that's cute. You just made up a character that didn't exist and pretended they were there the whole time. Oh, that's so charming. Good for you, Tom Brevoort. One day you'll have a big kid imagination too. But if you want me to evaluate your story with any seriousness, then treat your characters seriously and don't try to bait people into having a political argument with you so that you can claim moral superiority over sexist fans. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. That was my rant. Catch you later.